Well, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today here in this wonderful space and online. My name is Valentina, and I'm your panel moderator. We are Women in Tech Iceland, holding a panel about why inclusive teams make better products and services. With me here, we have Beatriz Garcia Martinez, who is Huawei's Technology Public Affairs Manager for the Iceland branch. We have Brandor Karlsson, founder of Frumbjörg, Berglind Gudmundsdóttir, Technical Lead at CCP, Joyce Taeosaki, Product Manager at Trackwell, Vidir Ragnarsson, Head of Consulting at Pay Analytics, and Eva Dögg Steingrímsdóttir, Director of Software Development at Grid. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, as I mentioned, today we're discussing why inclusive teams make better services and products. We all know that companies with inclusive teams are outperforming and outproducing companies with homogeneous teams. This panel will discuss why we make better services and products and how we can identify the biases and barriers that are preventing the best technical and product talent from joining and staying on your teams, and how to fix this. We will also discuss where Icelandic companies are on the spectrum of inclusivity, both locally and abroad, and they scale and gain international, and as they scale and gain international reach. How the growth in the immigrant population over the last decade has helped diversify Iceland and improve its tech ecosystems, and why specialist visa are only a small part of this story. So I wanted to start by asking our panelists about where they see Iceland and Icelandic companies in relationship to inclusivity. How is the climate for diversity at your workplaces? What impact have you had on that climate? And how is it helping the organization better reach its goals?
Well, if I may start,
Yes.
I think in some respects we are far ahead, and I'm especially thinking about gender equality and diversity as you look at gender. But overall, I think Iceland has, and Icelandic companies kind of stop there. Okay. And looking at other factors like age, like ethnicity, race, we have a lot to learn there and a far way ahead of us there. Mm. But saying that, I think we can model what we have done in terms of gender and making a movement in that respect towards other demographic factors. I think if we really want to make the companies more diverse, mm-hmm. and addressing companies that are similar to the society and the community, we can kind of copy of our successes in how we have addressed gender equality.
Mm. I think I would really like to pick up on that point. I think I feel just in my current workplace, we're a big company with people from all over. I think we're lucky in many aspects with more diversity than many Icelandic companies have mm-hmm. maybe had the chance to. And there's a conscious and deliberate effort to sort of encourage that and embrace it. But I think you're absolutely right that we focus a lot on gender, mm-hmm. and we've done some really good things there. And one of the things that my company did, and I felt really was important and made me really just personally very happy, was when it was one of the first companies to get equal pay certification. And for me, just knowing both that that the pay is, or the compensation is fair, but also that the company cares enough about it to make the effort to get the certification was important to me. I think the basic sort of framework here is based on gender, but the company went farther and did it with regards to origin as well. Mm-hmm. And we can often exactly translate the things that we have done well into other dimensions.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's about awareness. So for some people, when you think about like a diverse team, especially maybe in software development, you're thinking about, yeah, that means they have a lot of women. But you're not maybe realizing that diversity is so much more, like you say, ethnicity, like gender, age, disability, just different kind of backgrounds, educational levels. Just it's so much more. So I think it's just we need to just brighten the scope. We've done a lot of good work with gender, but we need to like there's more.
Yeah. And I think it all just comes back to awareness, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I work for a smaller company, and I'm really grateful to, have been able to move to Iceland and keep in my field. And I was the first foreigner to join the team. And it was a challenge. At the same time, I got to learn a lot, and I think they also learned from me, and I've been able to kind of introduce more ideas and ways to make the network wider, and try to communicate with people that are not just from an Icelandic background, try to encourage them to kind of take a look at our company and see all the exciting things we're doing. I think all of these things need to be deliberate attempts, part of a strategic move to make sure that we are reaching out to these extended networks and that we're communicating in a way that attracts these talents from all these different places.
Yeah, for me it's interesting because I come more with a global perspective on this. I know in Iceland a lot has been accomplished in gender equality, but that is not really the case in the world over, and our company is a Chinese company. So it's really interesting for us. It's very important. Equality and diversity is very important, but it is because we are a Chinese company that has moved abroad and has globalized, and we have extremely benefited from the diversity of the teams that we work with. But in the gender field, we still have a gap. We are committed to breaching the gap, but we are definitely not very close. We are working towards it. So for us, gender equality is still a big problem. At the same time, diversity and inclusion particularly, including women in the tech field, because we're a tech company, and this is basically our biggest problem, is getting women with technical knowledge to join our team. So there's a lot that we have to do on that front, but I agree that the same policies that helped reach gender equality will help also dealing with inclusivity, and definitely having a concerted approach and determination to and a strategy to reach it is important.
I'm just thinking about all those answers. That was very insightful. I think for me, becoming disabled was a really enlightening experience, because I had been a white privileged man before that, and I'd never had to confront any of these issues which we are talking about now. But becoming disabled, I experienced a lot of prejudice, which I don't see as like there's no animosity in it. It's not that people don't like disabled people, but because I am in a wheelchair, and at the time I had a lot more difficulty speaking, I think people assumed that I had other limitations. So having grown up with a mom who was a geophysicist working in a community of mostly dominated by men, I had a really good role model. And what I had seen in her was she just showed up and did what she was going to do, regardless of the prejudice of the environment around her. So I kind of took it on myself to ignore all the negativity and biases which I felt imagined or real, and I just go ahead and attend places like this and show that there is a space for disabled people. Mm-hmm. But I do think that the fight for disabled people is kind of just beginning. I think we are seeing, if we look at the fight for women's rights here in Iceland, I think we look at that as an example. But right now there are many challenges, and like accessibility is something which women and other races don't maybe need to confront in the same way, but is a big hindrance. And then we have to deal with all the same stuff, the kind of biases which affect us all.
Yeah. Yeah, well, thank you very much for your enlightening answers. And how about the challenges? What did you see as the most challenging aspects of the increase in diversity in the Icelandic society? And when I say diversity, I mean, the female-male ratio in the workplace, the different cultures, religions, races, and the disabled.
Well, yeah.
I can start there because I'm a foreigner. I've been living here for 6 years, and I have to say that entering the workforce in a professional way in Iceland was definitely challenging. It was not easy. And I think part of it is not a language barrier because everybody here speaks English. It is not a knowledge barrier. It is more of a social barrier. There is, to a certain extent, a lot of exclusivity in groups and particularly in workplaces. A lot of it is around language, of course, but I think a lot of it is also around just not being willing to break your pattern of behavior, to include other people. So it's a very deliberate, I think, exclusion, even though it's subjective. I say deliberate because it happens deliberately, but I don't think it's necessarily meant in that way. So I think that's one of the biggest barriers. I think this, like when we were talking about equality, there has to be a targeted effort, an actual effort to include people. And that means, maybe reading CVs in a different language and having interviews in,
Contracts.
yes, contracts in English, just changing a little bit of that. For us, for example, I was very surprised when I joined Huawei. It is a global company, I knew that, but everything in our company happens in English. And even our Chinese colleagues, just the communication happens in English. And I think that's one very important way in which people from different cultures can communicate and come together. I'm not saying that English should be the language, but in order to promote inclusivity, you have to give up a little bit of your space. You have to cede it, whether that be language or ways of working or anything like that.
That's a really good point on the inclusivity also, because it's not enough just to hire a really diverse workforce. Just like we want different kinds of people and then just play. I mean, you need to, it's an effort that the whole company needs to be on the same page, and it needs to be communicated to the employees that, what's the benefit of having a diverse team? What is the value? And everybody needs to be aware of that and be on board to, go through this journey, because it's going to be, like you said, people are going to have to change maybe the way they work, and people have different kind of communication styles, and people communicate differently and have different kind of thoughts, and there are always going to be conflicts, especially when you have a lot of group with different kind of people who think differently, who communicate differently, but just recognizing the difference between task conflict and personal conflict, I think it's really important that it is normal that not everybody agrees with you, but it's not a personal attack against you. We are thinking differently. So I think it's really important that we just don't focus on diversity, that inclusivity is the key. And that's that's an ongoing effort. That's never done. Now we're done working on that, and it's going to be great forever. That's just something that you need to invest in.
I mean, it's so easy to have these silos, right? I'm thinking larger companies too. When you hire, foreigners, they end up just kind of hanging out with each other, and then you have the Icelandic team members, and you have the foreign team members. They're speaking English with each other, and then they just kind of stop mixing. I mean, I've been very fortunate, at least in my company. There are a lot of people that have tried their best to kind of include me in the conversation. So we're kind of just doing this mix of Icelandic English. I mean, personally, I'm also very grateful to be exposed to a lot of Icelandic, because that helps me also learn the language. But I can see how, at least when I joined, there wasn't a specific kind of deliberate onboarding experience designed for bringing somebody from the outside in. So there were a lot of challenges in those regards. I mean, mainly spending like probably a good portion of a year not really understanding what was going on around me, with the exception of like work meetings, right? So at least being very empathetic to that challenge, and having more foreigners now joining our team, I've been trying to work towards having a very solid kind of onboarding experience and being focused on the employee experience as they on board, especially if they're foreigners, that they have somebody to talk to, that they know what our company values are and like what's going on, and just trying to make people feel as welcome as they can, that there is a space for them, that they are great contributors to the company.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And it's like we were, all deciding beforehand what to talk about, because we feel very much on the same points. Like it comes back to this awareness and deliberateness, because instinctively, if it's not a problem for me, it's not a problem, and I don't want to think about it. If there isn't a ramp, it's not a problem. I can just take the stairs, But it's going to be a problem for Brandur. So, and a challenge that I have experienced in the past, I've always felt very, very welcomed, and I've felt that companies in my industry welcome women into the workplace. But then there's the follow-up. It's not enough to just hire them. I've experienced in the past there isn't necessarily the willingness to address things like inappropriate language or behaviors that make you feel uncomfortable. It's always been like that. Don't worry. So that's definitely it comes back to this. You have to think about it. It has to be deliberate, and you have to make an effort and change your ways, exactly like you were saying.
Yeah. What I'm thinking about is awareness is one thing, but diversity has to be managed. It is. We think we have to get it into the heads of those that lead. That we are advancing by having a diverse team, and it doesn't, as you all pointed out, doesn't just happen by hiring the diverse team. You have to manage the diversity, and so to benefit from the diversity in the team, you need the leaders that stand for diversity and are willing to let that drop down the hierarchy on all levels, we've been seeing this in terms of Iceland and women, and not to misunderstand my words before, that we have reached equality in terms of women. We are far away, and especially in tech and trades, with tradespeople. But when you are a foreigner and a woman, then the intersectionality of two or three variables that sets you apart from the others. We have to have some systems in place within the companies that addresses these, so we are able to benefit on the diversity. If you don't do that, it will be only you won't benefit from it. It will be just costly.
Yeah. Well, now back to your answers. So we know that having an inclusive team that is the dream team that's doing great things for its company is not plug and play. So especially when we're living in a relatively small and closed society, where, as you mentioned, Joyce, foreigners tend to get isolated because of language barriers and cultural barriers. So this is something that's happening both at the workplace and outside of the workplace. So from your perspective, when hiring people from different backgrounds, how can we ease this integration transition, both from the individual side and the companies? How can we help each other so that people end up being more integrated and the companies can champion the team that's going to do amazing things for them?
Can I?
Of course.
Well, so again, when I first became disabled, I would look at people's faces a lot. And I remember the first time I was in a wheelchair, I was rolling around IKEA. And I noticed so many people looking at me, and I imagined them thinking, oh, why is he in a wheelchair? He's so young, and and I started experiencing like a kind of aversion from them. And after thinking about it for now 10 years, my theory now is that they foresaw a challenge in communicating with me because they saw an embarrassing moment coming to me, not knowing how to talk to somebody in a wheelchair. Should they be empathetic or just ignore the fact that I'm in a wheelchair? And I started experiencing certain people that would come and they would just put their hand on my shoulder and start talking to me normally and no issue. And after a short conversation, I would always find out that they had past experiences. They had met somebody, they knew somebody, their father or somebody who kind of broke that barrier for them. So I think I know if I am hired into a big company, it will require a lot of effort, depending on which company, of course. But making accessibility, I need special eye control. So already that's a big hindrance for a company to hire me. But then also, I kind of I've dealt with this before. But I know that other people in my situation, they will avoid going to big companies because of the fear of having to be on the other side of that challenge of like as I say, I don't see it as any kind of hate or that kind of prejudice, but it's this fear of this uncomfortable situation. And I imagine that it's like that for a lot of Icelanders, because when I was growing up, there were not many foreigners in Iceland, and I was lucky that I spent some years in America, so I had that experience. But being in Iceland, if you saw somebody of color, then it was like, wow, that's interesting because it's so different. Mm-hmm. So I think there are a lot of these kinds of barriers that we still need to break down to some degree. And that's my 10 cents.
Yeah. I would say also empowerment. I mean, I think part of what you're saying is reminds me of when you say past experiences, also of role models. Seeing people who are diverse taking the lead in projects, leading teams, getting things done, and being rewarded for it, and being given the acknowledgement that they need. I think when you put people who are capable, and there's many people from diverse backgrounds who are capable in leading positions, they leave a very marked trace that then can become a path for somebody else to see themselves in that role. And also for everybody else to see that people who are from a diverse background have the capabilities. I think that's really, really important. Optics sometimes, it's interesting, but optics sometimes are everything. I have a legal background, and in law, you have to not only do things right, but you have to make sure that they appear to be that you're doing them right. And I think that is so true of everything, right? When you are in a management position and you put people of diverse backgrounds in power, you're not only demonstrating, not in power, but in leadership positions, I mean, you're not only demonstrating that that person is capable, but you're giving somebody else the opportunity to see themselves in them.
Exactly.
I'm going to say, I think on an organizational level, training.
Training.
For sure. And there are, companies that are taking steps into educating companies about diversity. I'm going to plug Gecko over here. Lovely. And on a personal level, I think, it just coming from a design background, I would say curiosity, right? There's a great quote from one of my favorite psychologists/therapists, Esther Perel, and she says, "Curiosity will ground you in reality." Right? And it's about, just this uncomfortable feeling that people get when talking to you, and this fear of saying the wrong thing, right? Like if you approach people with the heart of getting to know you better, all those things can disappear. Just put your heart in the right place and get to know people as people, not as somebody with a disability or a foreigner. Just ask the
Yeah.
questions and find out who people are. So.
I agree with training, and at GRID we have a person working with us as a culture coach, and we've been doing like feedback workshops, conflict resolutions, like how can we, like had a workshop on that. So I think that's really important. You can like just to tackle the problem and working on it like straight ahead instead of like indirectly. So directly just like now we're working on this thing that's going to help us work together better. And I just want to say like one small thing that everybody can do, this is maybe more related to like gender equality, is to change a little bit how you speak. So when you're talking about a group of people, instead of like always speaking like, because Icelandic is very gendered, so just everybody can, instead of saying like þeir, you can say þau, or like búnir, búin. So that's like a small thing that everybody can do, but it just makes you feel so much as a part of the team when you're included, like so it doesn't sound like, oh, the guys did it, or the guys at this company. So everybody can do that. That's really easy.
Yeah, and that has to do with, well, taking away the barriers and changing the culture within the company, well, to be welcoming to everyone. It's so clear in the case of disability, there is this physical barrier, but the barrier is there also on all other levels. And I have sometimes said in terms of diversity and equality that if we truly believe it is a competitive advantage, why don't we put it into the performance rating of our CEOs or leaders and pay them for creating this diversity if we really believe it is a winning strategy.
Getting back to the language, it just quickly reminded me my 18-year-old daughter. She has started greeting everyone, including her brothers, with "Hey girl." And I think it's like a counterweight to this "Hey guys" or "Hey man" or something like that. And definitely language is important. And coming back then to the silos and the cultural or the language barrier, I think that was something, at least the CCP felt was important and put a lot of emphasis on a few years ago, was to sort of emphasize that English was the working language in the office, not just in formal conversations or in meetings, but also in informal conversations. So you're included at the coffee machine or wherever. But I also think it's a lot easier in a big company like CCP with a lot of people from foreign countries. It's a lot more difficult when you're like the only person in the office who doesn't speak Icelandic, definitely.
Yeah, but that solves the problem with you not knowing, should I switch now because this person is walking like past the coffee machine and maybe wants to be in the conversation, so you're switching to English and back to Icelandic. So I think could be a good idea just to, and you don't have to be switching to try to include people. They're just included by default.
Yeah.
There's also the angle, you know, if you always switch to English, then they never have the chance to learn Icelandic.
Yeah.
So you're not really sure.
It's kind of a weird balance, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's a good conversation to have also, instead of both sides feeling awkward about making the other uncomfortable. That's what I'm saying. Just be curious and.
What do you want me to do?
Yeah.
Yeah. And we, like, just my team has started doing this recently at the starting of stand-ups, which are obviously on Teams. But then the first, minutes while people are getting in, they'll be, saying "góðan daginn" or whatever in Icelandic, just to sort of expose.
Yeah, and I totally have empathy for Icelandic people who are, of course, more comfortable in their own language, and when they're doing presentations, that they want to sound as confident as they can. And I mean, language is power, right? Like the language that you're the most comfortable with is the one that's going to help you express your true self. And I don't, I have empathy for them for wanting to speak in the language that they are born with. One thing that my company has done, for example, for those who are not as comfortable in English, is that the slides are in English, but they are able to present in Icelandic, which I think is a good compromise. And then we have some follow-ups after if somebody missed, the content of the presentation. But I don't know, I think it's a give and take. Like, I don't think anybody likes to be preached to necessarily. Am I allowed to ask a question?
What?
Am I allowed to ask a question?
Of course. I mean,
okay. No, I was just wondering. So I have a lot of game design colleagues from my past experience, and there was a number that was thrown out that 25% is the amount that the public is comfortable at deliberate attempts to show diversity in a game, for example. And like, I just wanted to ask you guys, like, what's your experience about, like, how do you bring diversity in a way that doesn't feel like preaching and where people just start to push back because too in your face?
Well, having been in a role of diversity and inclusion at Reykjavik Energy in my former job, it was, well, I sometimes felt like that, that preaching, I was in the role of preaching. But, well, of course, it helped immensely to have the management team echoing what I was saying. So, well, but I really believe it is a challenge. But if you, well, have data and have some information for people that this is a beneficial factor, then you can, well, arm them with that.
I think it's really important that the people don't feel like we're just trying to fill a quota, or we're just trying to look good on the outside. Like that's like you say, that we have to like be aware of the benefits, and everybody agrees on the benefits and the value. And maybe you have to revisit it again because people forget really fast. So it's just something that you have to constantly be like discussing and reminding people of.
Yeah, I think it's really important. I don't think I have. I had one experience where I have been talking about diversity and inclusion that was taken as if I wasn't preaching. Because it's like a bit of, you know, how it feels, especially to me, because I'm a foreigner.
Yeah.
So if I start talking about diversity and inclusion, people look at me like, yeah, okay, so did you just want us to include more foreigners? So it's, yeah, it is challenging.
Yeah.
Don't we always have to start with, some preaching? I kind of, I've been trying to participate in the disability fight, and I've been very happy that there are some very preachy people other than me, and they're making a lot of noise. And I see it as, although I don't agree always with, the extremity of their stance, I kind of see that they are providing a nice middle ground for me to come into. But I think, them being there is really important.
Yeah.
So going a bit too far, I think, helps kind of create a balancing point.
Yeah. I'd like to follow up a little bit on that, because I do think it's important, like everybody said, to frame the need, to frame the importance, to make people understand there is value and benefit in diversity and inclusion. But then on the other hand, you also have to take steps to generate diversity and inclusion.
Yeah.
And I want to give an example. Us as a technology company, we always say, we need more women developers, for example. Well, then it is our job, I think, and we do it, to go and try and get more women interested in ICT so that we can get the diversity that we need. So it has to be a little bit of both. I think a little bit of preaching is absolutely necessary, but it's empty and hollow if it's not followed up with some concrete steps in order to really generate that diversity. In Iceland, for example, I would say read CVs in a different language, and interview those people, because one thing is what you see on paper and another thing is what you see face to face.
Yes.
Right? That is one way, not just saying we have to be diverse, but really trying to include the people who are capable and who come from diverse backgrounds into your company.
Right. And how about your experiences, your own experiences relating to people from whose backgrounds is different than yours in your company? How has that impacted you so that you are creating a better environment in the company, you're creating better products and better services?
Well, I just remember when I first joined CCP, and at the time, at least for me, it was a very unique workplace, very different from my previous experiences. And just coming there and experiencing people from all over, you know, even the informal conversations were so different from what I had experienced before. And this was a while ago, several years, and I just remember I felt so challenged and excited and inspired. It was just a really sort of driving to, you know, really do my best and sort of be on my toes almost.
Yeah, and it is also a learning curve, right? Because it is, you get to know all these new, different perspectives that people are bringing in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a huge challenge, and
Yeah.
but it was also really, really exciting.
Well, being in a company of, 14 now, with, I'm proud to say 50-50 men and women in a software development company. Diversity is so close to our hearts because we are building a software that helps companies eliminate any kind of pay gaps. But so it's important to us to address this and feel it, and so we can help other companies with our software addressing the causes of the pay gap. And that is the things we are talking about here, because it's manifest then in how you get paid and how you get reimbursed in the companies. So it has to be in our DNA, or we put it in the DNA of our employees.
But have there been challenges, or like, you know, when you are meeting people from different backgrounds, have there been something that stood up that helped you change your thinking as to how you could do better?
Yeah, well, I'm kind of new in this role, but getting to know people from, different markets, where the challenges are difficult. When we are addressing the USA market, race is something you have to address. You have to have that a part of your solution. It's not that big matter in the Europe, not still, but there are other factors there. And that has to change how we address and what we address. So it is helpful to these conversation with customers and also employees in different countries, learning what they are challenging and what are the challenging there. And that is totally different between markets.
I understand.
I guess I have an anecdote.
Yeah.
So, my background is originally from design and, and UX. Of course, accessibility is something that's a very hot topic. But it's always been kind of in theory, right? Like it's something that you should be thinking about this. And then I was working on a project, and then one of the developers kind of like tapped me on the shoulder. It's like, hey, I can't really see these colors properly. I was like, what? It was like, oh yeah, I'm colorblind. And I was like, oh my God, like I met for the first time an actual colorblind person like working on my project, and it was so refreshing to actually see a real human being like representing that challenge, and not just like in theory that you should be thinking about this, but like okay, like I should be putting more effort into this, and it helped me kind of focus a lot more on accessibility issues in our design projects. So it's been, you always learn something by meeting more people.
Yeah.
True.
Great. Anything else to add? No?
Well, I have also this sort of more tangible, maybe anecdotal, experience. One of the dimensions in diversity that we often talk about, and in management often talk about how important it is to have diversity in age and experience. And I'm in a very experienced team. It's a great team, and experience is really valuable and all that. But then having someone join the team like almost fresh out of school with just very recent education and surprisingly sometimes maybe different viewpoints, even if their backgrounds is in many ways similar, still it just was so refreshing and sort of enabled all sorts of new things somehow.
One thing that I learned is just how much we are sometimes in an echo chamber, because we just, Iceland especially, so homogeneous, like we're not that diverse, and then you also seek out people who are similar to you, and you like people having kind of same opinions as you, and you like when people agree with you. So one thing I learned is just like, oh, there are a lot of people who think totally different from me, and they like have different opinions than me. So one thing that I had to work on was just accepting that and being comfortable with like bouncing back ideas and having my ideas or opinions criticized without taking it personally, and just realizing that like there are people out there who are so different from you and think so differently from you, and just being comfortable with that is one thing that I learned.
Exactly, and just what you said earlier, like the people might have a different opinion, but it doesn't mean that they are attacking you. It's just accepting that, that we're different. That's a good thing.
And just being patient, like listening to people, and they have different kind of way to rationalizing or telling your story, and like not being like, what is this person saying? I can't follow. Like trying to be patient and just realizing that people are different.
I mean, on a practical standpoint, right? Like in technology, if you're building a product, true successful products like reach all like as many people from different markets as possible, and you need all of these views in order to be able to build that product. So just nurturing that empathy is crucial to be able to do that.
Exactly. So another question: what are your companies doing to further the knowledge about diversity and inclusion, and how are they leveraging the knowledge throughout the organization?
I will start with that, if that's okay. So for us, we do a lot of CSR programs dedicated to bringing ICT skills to people who may not otherwise have them. And in our programs, one of them, which is Seeds of the Future, where we teach about IoT and 5G and other such leading technologies, we are, of course, bringing advanced ICT skills to men and women and people from diverse backgrounds. But we also have a lot of rural projects in countries like Bangladesh and in other African countries where we teach specifically women. We take a bus and we teach women about ICT skills, because we do believe that digitalization and getting skills to be able to enter the digital workplace or the digital scene will improve diversity for sure. It will allow women to join an economy that they might otherwise not enjoy. And it's the same, we do the same for kids as well. So I think for us, the focus has really been, on the one hand, driving skills through to the population that we need to then grow up and join our ICT industry. But then on the other hand, we do initiatives like this. We partner up with organizations in different countries, and we do hackathons or events like this that are basically trying to frame the conversation on the one hand, and also raising awareness on the other hand. And what I said before about role models, I think is really important. We are very proud, for example, to have a few women in very high executive level positions in our company, and we definitely want young girls and women to see themselves in them, as well as, in the women in this panel and in the diverse group in this panel. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I'll go next then. I mean, CCP is a fairly big company, for an Icelandic company at least, and with people from at least diverse backgrounds, though maybe other dimensions are less represented maybe. But there's a clear equality policy with clear action points and with success criteria, and there's a lot of emphasis on that people know, there's support to it, that people are treated in the same way, in just and equal way. There's mandatory, it's called bullying and harassment prevention meetings for all employees, and that has been, and just, for me, and I think for everyone, has been, everybody learns something from it. There's all sorts of language that we kind of forget or don't realize it isn't appropriate, and behaviors, where's the line between teasing and harassment and all those things. And all employees are responsible for, for maintaining or for following it through, for using the shared language, for using English as a language, and for making the workplace a welcoming and safe place. And there's also, and this comes back to a point you were making earlier, there's the visibility, like a deliberate effort to make sure that, pictures show, not just one type of employees, and that, for me personally, I've always taken it as just a part of my job as a female software engineer to be visible for someone to relate to who might have an interest in the field. I think it's, sadly, we're seeing that there are fewer girls who just are interested in this, but for those who are, I want to be there as a, visible reminder that it is an option, and it is a really exciting career and a fun job.
Well, for us, as a growing company, it is a goal for us to be as like the community as we are operating in, and that is both the Icelandic and also the other markets we are bringing our awareness to. So I think it would be a very enlightening exercise for Icelandic companies to list out their employees by demographic factors and comparing to the demographics in Iceland. The Icelandic society has changed a lot in the last 10 years, and ask them why are we not representing a lot of talents that are in the society today, just because they are immigrants, or are we really allowing language to be a barrier to attracting the right talent to our company? So I think questions like that are very helpful for companies if we really mean to take a stance for diversity and inclusion, to do an exercise like this.
Yeah. But where do we see Icelandic companies in relation to that? Where do we see Icelandic companies in relation to inclusivity, diversity? Do you think Icelandic companies are being active in the quest for diversity and inclusivity?
No, not really.
No.
No.
Okay.
I think we are overlooking a lot of people from other countries and their talents, and not attracting them, and especially women in tech. Yeah. We have a lot of women here and have moved to Iceland, and we are not giving them opportunity both in the health sector, the tech sector, and why is that? If we want to fight for bringing more women to the table, why are we not looking into our immigrant population?
Exactly.
Yeah, I would say active, probably not, but open to it, definitely. And I
Okay.
think it just takes more events like this and people seeing people like us in the public eye. Certainly, yeah, it just helps bring in this new generation of people that thinks, yes, like there is a space for me, that I can be here. So I think that's crucial.
Not only a space, a need.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And as more company are hiring diverse people, like diverse people are going to seek them out because
Yes.
they want to work somewhere where the
Exactly.
company is focusing on these things, and they want to work somewhere where they're not the only woman in the company or the only foreigner in the company.
Yeah.
So it's just getting the ball started a little bit, and
Yeah.
then it kind of can roll.
I
It's
think
a
you can
win-win situation.
Yeah. I think you can only take one step in the right direction, right? Like, I don't think the goal should be to take all of the leaps all at once. Like, the important thing is that you do take a step towards that direction. But you got to have that vision. You have to have a vision, right?
Yeah.
And I have an issue with looking at diversity as a commodity to the bottom line. It's like, okay, you just gotta hire a diverse team and then I'll look at the money. Like, I don't think, I think CEOs are people too, like every one of us, and people are more inspired by having this vision of a place where, you know, many people have a voice and we can build great products that way.
Yeah.
So.
Exactly.
I would just have to say, I mean, I think to a certain extent companies can go beyond what societies do and much quicker. But at the same time, companies are a reflection of what society is like. And we have to be honest, there is, even though Icelandic society has changed a lot in the past few years, I came here first in 2003, it's a much more diverse society. This is still not an intercultural society.
Right.
And I doubt that companies are going to really reflect that for many years to come unless there is a concerted effort to do so. But I think that change will go at the same pace as society opens up and becomes more intercultural. Not just multicultural, but really intercultural.
Yeah, and to your point, Beatrice, and also last question, because we only have 10 minutes left. Well, we have seen an increase in, I'll call it multiculturality in the country in the past 10 years. But we've also been focusing, when it comes to inclusion and diversity at the workplace, we've also been focusing a lot on the female-male ratio. Where do you think we should put our efforts going forward? Because as you know, we have been discussing, inclusion is so much more than just female, male, we want more women in the workplace. So where do you think we should put our efforts going forward?
I think Beatrice pointed out earlier, we need to start way sooner than, like, you can't hire a lot of women to a company when there are no women who
Prepare for
the
role.
job.
Yeah.
So just like, I think we need to start really early in school just to empower girls and try to get the stigma that, like, for example, in software development, that programming is for boys. And yeah, I think we need to start earlier than just with when we're preparing to hire people.
How about people with disabilities?
Yeah, the same.
Yeah, and I was actually, when, preparing for this, I was trying to think back, and it's just surprising. I don't know what the ratio is of people with, even just various disabilities. I've never worked with a deaf person, for instance, or a blind person, and there must be a reason why they don't go into this field. That there's something sort of pushing them back, maybe. I don't know. It feels off. It feels there should be, just considering the ratios.
For disabled people, there are a lot of barriers, and
Yeah.
disabilities are very varied, of course. So it's challenging for me to come here and pretend to be able to speak on behalf of all disabled people. So I kind of, my niche is the accessibility, and but I think one of our founding goals for Frimpjörg originally was to improve access to innovation, to support disabled innovators in creating their own projects. The challenge there turned out to be mostly funding. So most of the disabled people, they require a little bit extra. They need somebody to interpret, they need somebody to pass them things or push the buttons, such things. So we didn't have a budget, so we weren't really able to fulfill our original goal as I had hoped. But I really like your point. I think role models is definitely one of the beginning points. Like when I was disabled, you kind of learn to do nothing. It's a state of learned helplessness. So you kind of give up on trying because you've been confronted by failure, so often. And then you see a movie, you see a TV show, you see something where somebody who looks like you, is like you, disabled like you, is doing and achieving. And then I think you get infected with the idea, if he can, then maybe I can. So yeah, I think that was a really good point.
I think you're a role model by being here today and speaking up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, does it have to be an all or nothing focus? I think.
Not necessarily.
Yeah, I think we all take a commitment to lift each other up. I think that's already a great step, right? Like for me, I am a woman in the tech industry, but I'm also Asian. I literally only know one other Asian person in a leadership position in the tech field here. And I know there's a second, third generation of Asian people growing up here, and they need to be able to see others that look like them doing interesting things. I think that's very important. So I think, I don't know if the strategy is to just pick the gender divide and put all our eggs in there. I think we can all just commit together to, bring all our voices together.
Yeah,
to
but I
raise
think
each
you have to
other
be
up,
on both sides. You know, like companies will, they probably want to have a lot of people with different backgrounds, but the people with different backgrounds, we need them to apply for jobs, and we need them to want to be part of.
And aspire to.
Exactly.
Yeah. But then again, you come to the role models. If there's already somebody at the company that kind of looks like you or represents you, then you're going to be more inclined to apply for the job at the company because you know that.
And they will also have the network.
And then they will know more people.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, managing diversity and it's not a easy thing, but it pays off, and that has to do with removing culture that is a barrier. I think that is one of the biggest steps.
Yeah.
So
Do you know, is there a service where people who just immigrated in Iceland can get somebody to just guide them around and integrate them and show them the bars and the swimming pools and just like a first stop person?
I think there's a piecemeal type service. I know, for example, there are people who volunteer to go to the library to meet foreigners and give them information when they just come here. I think there's services here and there that cater to different kinds of categories of immigrants. I don't think there's a service that covers everyone.
Yeah.
Well, time is almost up. Do you have anything else to add?
I think this was really fun.
Thank you.
for having me.
Yeah, well, I have to say thank you very much to our panelists and to the people here at Groska and to everyone who joined us online. It was just a great panel, and I'm really happy with the answers. They're really, educational. Yeah, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for having us.
Thank you.